Hello everyone, Figment here, and Music and I went across the street earlier today to get some ice cream. It was a blast. Today I'm going to be going over my thoughts on Astrale's new album, Past, Present, Future. Past, Present, Future is Astrale's second album in his seemingly yearly album/EP cycle where he produces music varying to just about anything. He's got rock tracks, electropop tracks, hell, even ambient tracks. Dude can probably make just about anything he wants. I found out about Astrale's music back in early 2022 with the release of his second single for Oral, his debut album. That single in question is C. Immediately I was hooked on the futuristic sound and style Astrale had to offer. The instrumental, while being nothing totally out of the ordinary, was extremely well crafted to bring a sense of emotion. Being paired with vocals and lyrics of someone wanting to rise above or escape some unknown state made this song pretty much a pleasant surprise in a way, and this song ended up becoming one of my earliest playlist adds of last year. I stuck around for Oral and I wasn't disappointed, because I had checked out Cyberline beforehand. Hearing this album compared to that one was very different in terms of Astrale's discography. While the basis of Cyberline involved mostly electronic-oriented drums and synths with a hint of guitar, with Oral we get that and much more. As I mentioned earlier, with him making rock and ambient tracks, Oral was the first time we really got to see that. It was refreshing to see Astrale branch out with this album, and sticking around to hear it was worth it. A tour with Puppet, a release on Bitbird, and a handful of releases later, we finally get Past, Present, Future. First thing I noticed before starting this album was that there were only 3 new songs on it. I have a bit of a pet peeve when it comes to an artist releasing a majority of their album through singles, then only saving 1 to 3 releases for the actual album release. Say what you want about album rollouts like this, you may like them, you may not. I may elaborate my thoughts on this topic at some point in the future, but that's another video for another day. Even though there's not much new content with this album release, I kept my head held high going into it and was ready to indulge this blend of pre-releases and new tracks. Kicking off this album, we have Lost My Mind, a pretty groovy synth-pop track about remembering a past online love interest. However, that said love interest hadn't felt the same way back, making Astrale, well, lose his mind. Now what can I say, these are lyrics that I pretty much heavily relate to. I've had my fair share of this sort of experience. While I think the instrumental is pretty normal for Astrale's standards, I think the song pretty much works for what it is, and there's not much of a complaint to it. Faces is my favorite song on the whole album and pretty much in my top 5 songs of the year so far. The production here is peak indie rock for Astrale, and the lyrics about striving to be an influence while being unsure if you're going to make that point and just being told to wait for that moment are just phenomenal when paired with this instrumental. How to Observe was my favorite Astrale song before hearing this song for the first time, and Faces easily overtook that favorite spot afterward. Seeing Things is the first song released along with the album itself, and to my surprise it was a simple yet bone-chilling piano ballad where Astrale expresses about missing someone and the repetition of seeing things the same way. There's not much going on in the track, but it didn't need that at all. Also, shout out to that ambient pad that just plays after the piano stops. I really love that effect in music where everything stops, but you hear the one sound just play out and it works pretty well emotionally. For context as well, this song has apparently been in the works for 3 years, starting off as a garage-sounding tune in 2020, a slower, vibey indie song in 2021, and an even slower electropop song in 2022. I think the decision to turn this into a piano ballad was perfect, and the fact the version we hear on this album has how it came to be was the best possible direction the song could go. You can check out the other versions of Seeing Things in his Discord server, which I'll link in the description along with all of his other socials. Slow-mo basically repeats some of the messages that we hear in Seeing Things about Astrale's impatience. The instrumental on this one seems to be the most laid back out of all the instrumentals so far, other than the guitar solo. That was pretty epic. Now, the instrumental being this relaxed, I totally understand. I mean, the song's titled Slow-mo, it's pretty much about taking it slow. Despite this, I don't really feel much with this track as much as the previous tracks have made me feel. This is just fine to me. Technicolor is another new song here. I find it funny how I got on the other song for feeling a bit slow on purpose, but this one's even slower. Thus, in return, this is another song I don't really feel much with either. I'm working without a lyric page here to interpret what's being said about the song, but from what I can understand, there's messaging here in this song that ties back into Faces, like lyrics about being uncertain about having the ability to make a change. The outro of this song is probably the most interesting part as it's pretty different to the rest of the song. Just picture you have this slow, calm, raucous jam, and then you have these interesting wavy synths that just come in right at the end. While the whole song itself probably won't be as remembered as much as others, it might still be worth listening for that interesting ending. What I experience in Lie is also what I've experienced in the past with C. Lie's production compared to C, however, while being more relaxed, still gives me the same impact. Lyrically, instead of talking about the changes Astrale wants to happen around him like in other songs, here he expresses his feelings on not being able to change himself. It's not explicitly stated whether or not he wants to change, but at the same time, considering his repeating themes of not being fine indirectly around other expressions wanting said change, he probably does. Time in the Day I treat more as an interlude because of its short runtime. In summary, Astrale sings over a simple guitar loop, once again trying to understand the lyrics without the help of a lyric page since there isn't one available. I think he's singing about going through repetitive and meaningless days. There's a vocal sample at the end that says, "No matter what happens, you just got to hang on," or something like that. This is something I imagine Astrale tells himself all the time, trying to hope for better days, which is exactly what Peace of Mind has messages of. Astrale tries to garner a feeling of safety while writing all of these songs. I think this suits pretty well as a conclusion for this whole album, as most of the other songs have been about wanting this positive change, but Astrale just hasn't found it yet. So for now, all he can do is hope. The production here is pretty well made to give these feelings of hope as well. Overall, while I think this album can get pretty repetitive with its recurring messages of wanting change, I still think it's pretty much worth listening to, especially since the higher points on this album for me overshadow that slight repetition pretty well. While I think I still prefer Oral over this album for having a lot more production variety, you can definitely tell there was an effort in Past, Present, Future to connect a bunch of lyrical ideas to form a thought-out album. Astrale's production, despite not being different that much here compared to his past works, is still refreshing to listen to, and I hope we see it take a different direction with the next project before it gets old. Yeah, this album's solid. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. And that about wraps it up for this one. See you guys later. Also, shout out to that ambient pad that just plays after the piano stops. I really love that effect in music where everything stops, but you hear the one sound just play out, and it works pretty well emotionally.